Is being recorded. All right, welcome. My name is Jason Parker. Most of you are here tonight because of the retirement budget calculator. I think that's the way that most of you were invited to this particular event. And today, this hour is all about you. So it's open office hours. It's to talk about the calculator, retirement planning, investment management, financial planning, Social Security, pensions, lump sum, you name it. This is how I spend all my time every day thinking through, helping people on this journey into and through retirement. So any questions you have, I want to answer for you. Of course, I'll give you a quick rundown on how the calculator works. One of the things I always forget is that some of you, the only exposure you've ever had to the work that we're doing is through the calculator, retirementbudgetcalculator.com. You found it on YouTube or you found it on just doing a search for retirement calculators. I'm not quite sure how you found it, but a couple of other things I want to make sure that you're aware of. One is this Sound Retirement Planning is a podcast I've been doing now for a long time. And so all of the podcasts are archived here. So if you go to Sound Retirement Planning, this is the latest episode number 423, where I examine to sell or not sell a rental property. If you click on this link, it'll bring you to the full post. And then you'll notice here is the player. Now, of course, you can always subscribe on Apple or whatever podcast tool that you use. And then I always provide articles, links, and resources that are mentioned. So you can see these are all links to different articles and things I was researching, things I was reading about as I was preparing for these different shows. So that's available to you. So the podcast is a great resource. We have I think we're approaching like 1.4 or 1.5 million downloads on the podcast. The books, so my newest book is Retirement Calculator, How Much Money Do I Need to Retire? And my first book was Sound Retirement Planning. So these are both resources that are available to you. You can buy those on Amazon if you're making this journey into or preparing for retirement. And then of course, we'll get into the calculator in more detail here in just a minute. But let's see, let me see if I have any questions coming in yet. I just want to make sure our time is really used answering your questions so that you get the most out of this time together. So if anybody has any questions you'd like me to make sure that I'm covering for you today, go ahead and start typing those in. I'll give you a couple of other resources, a couple of other things to be thinking about. Now, you can see this is the Retirement Budget Calculator homepage. So when you first come to the calculator, this is what it looks like. And of course, you can get started for free. So using the calculator, we have the free version that gives you the ability to use the time tab, assets and liabilities, and to create a budget. And then if you want any of the more detailed or any of the more advanced features, that's where you can pay a subscription to have access to the premium version of the calculator. And let me show you what that looks like, the inside of the calculator, while you guys are writing down your questions. Okay, I see a couple of questions coming in here. Oh, great question, Jeff. The question is, how do you account for dividend or interest income within RBC? So I'll get into that in just a minute here. A couple of other resources I want to make sure you're aware of, things that even people that have been using the calculator for a long time aren't necessarily, because we're updating this, we're making it better all the time. So a couple of things. Number one, up here on the community tab, the community portal, once you become this is a premium feature. So this is for people that have bought a premium subscription to the calculator. But you'll notice the idea with the community portal is to give people the ability to ask questions, and then we can crowdsource those questions. So there's a lot of really smart people in the community. So I just want to make sure you're aware that this is a great place, whether you're trying to figure out something with the calculator or you're trying to figure out something with investing or financial planning or retirement planning. It's just a good place to connect with other smart people to ask questions. Another thing I want to show you that a lot of people aren't aware of is down here in the flow charts and checklists on the left-hand side. So if you want information on disability insurance, or will the distribution from my HSA be taxable or tax-free? So these different flow charts are here to ask you questions and then to guide you through some of the answers that you might be looking for. And we've got a bunch of different flow charts and checklists for you to look for, what to do if there's a recession, can I contribute to my Roth IRA, what issues should I consider if I lose my jobs, just a bunch of different resources in here. We have the community portal organized by discussion topics. So you can see start here is just for people that are brand new to the community. say hello, questions, estate planning, insurance, investing, Social Security, taxes, travel, recently retired, relocation and retirement, the podcast, general discussion. This one, I'm always excited about the travel. I think to myself, boy, if everybody would just share their best travel tips, it would make for a really rich experience whenever you wanted to go someplace or experience something new. You know, if we could collectively have just this brain that's dumping information in here, it would be really amazing. So I want to encourage you to use the community. Coming back over to the calculator, I also wanted to draw your attention to the goals. This is a feature that we put in here. And if you don't use this for anything other than lifetime goals, so lifetime goals are the things that you've always wanted to do your entire life. And if you could make those things happen, you would be able to look back and say it was a life well lived. So, you know, if you want to go skydiving, or one of my goals after my daughter finishes high school, I've always wanted to hike the Camino de Santiago. I had some clients do it kind of in portions. They did it. But you know, and I met a gentleman recently who is a retired pastor, and he did the Camino de Santiago, and he said it's very very peaceful, and you meet a lot of neat people, and so I just thought it'd be a cool experience. So this is how you could use those lifetime goals. I remember one of my clients one time said that they had a lifetime goal to do a 30-day cruise, but they weren't sure if they financially could afford to. And then by going through the planning process, we were able to determine that they were able to do that. And so whenever you create a goal, you just add it here. And so you could say 30-day cruise. And then when you accomplish that goal, you come in here and you check it off. And then of course, I'm a little bit weird about goal setting. So you could have daily goals if you want to have daily goals. You could come in here and say, you know, did you drink your water, the water, you know, however much water you committed to. Did you eat a banana for breakfast? Mark off your goals as you accomplish them. You can have weekly goals, monthly goals. Down here under follow-up, this is an area if you have financial items that you want to make sure you're following up. So in this example, update our will and power of attorney by June 15th, you know, just an opportunity to make sure that we're tracking these things, and you check them off when you get them done. Then it feels good, like you're making progress in your financial life. Another thing I wanted to draw your attention to is the YouTube channel for Retirement Budget Calculator. So the YouTube channel is, I try to post videos here that are relevant to retirement topics. So if you guys are trying to figure things out within the calculator, this is a good place. One of our members of the calculator created this RBC tour. And then we have an update that we've been working on for the calculator for some time now, and we're getting close to being able to launch that. And I'm hoping, right now we're testing it. I'm hoping by the end of this month, maybe we'll be able to start bringing some beta users in so they can try it. But I know that, again, we do a lot of work in the retirement planning space, so I just wanted to make sure you're aware of some of these different things that are available to you. Okay, so let me give you a quick overview of the calculator, and then I'll circle back around and I'll answer the questions. So the calculator is organized in a way to try to make it as simple as possible. So we get the three tabs where you enter information: time, assets and liabilities, and your budget data. And really, if you can put in your birthday, let me show you this. You put in your birthday, March of 1963 for John, and Nancy is April 1963. You'll notice up here, it shows life expectancy. So we're pulling this information from the Social Security mortality tables. So he's 61 years old, and according to Social Security, average life expectancy is 82 for him. And for Nancy, life expectancy is age 85. The tricky thing about life expectancy is the longer you live, the longer you're going to live. And so the other thing, Social Security doesn't know anything about your personal health habits and your personal health or your family history. So if everybody in your family lives to age 95, you can come down here and make a hereditary adjustment. Of course, you can put in your expected retirement date, so then that way we give you a countdown towards your retirement. And then the state of residence is really just more of a placeholder. It's not doing any calculations at this point, but eventually we may someday try to calculate state income taxes, but we haven't tried to tackle that yet. So that's the time tab. You just put in how old you are based on your birthday, month and year, and then how long do you think you're going to live. The next thing that you put into the calculator are your assets and liabilities. And you'll notice one of the things we don't have you do is connect all of your bank accounts to help you maintain your privacy. You don't have to put any usernames or passwords. You just enter this stuff manually. I recommend that you don't put any numbers in here to account, based on account numbers. Just keep it as simple as possible, as private as possible. But you can see in this case, John and Nancy have a savings account with 170,000, a brokerage account with 198,000, a traditional IRA in John's name that's 875,000, and then John has a Roth IRA, and that has 220,000. And a couple of things I want to point out on this page. Number one, make sure that you show what type of an account it is. So it starts out blank. Because we know it's a savings account, we want to select savings account. And the reason that this is so important is because the account type drives tax calculations on the tax tab here. So you want to make sure you have the right account type selected. The other thing that's important is you have the right owner selected for each account. So in this case, this is a savings account. We could say this is a joint account. And then this brokerage account's a joint account. And then these two, the IRA and the Roth, are both in John's name. And that's important because we're calculating estimated required minimum distributions on the future view. And that RMD calculation is in part based on the age of whoever you selected. So it's important you select the right people for being able to do those calculations. Of course, we have the rate of return in here. You can put in, a specific rate of return for each account. So 0%, 2%, 4%. I always encourage people to hope for the best, plan for the worst. So when you're doing this planning, make sure that you're assuming low rates of return. And then if you do that, hopefully every year as you're updating your plan, the numbers are going to look better and better, not worse and worse. So hope for the best, plan for the worst, assume low rates of return. And then over here, you can play with the withdrawal order. So in this case, we're having them dipping the savings account first, then the brokerage account, then the IRA, and then the Roth IRA. We put in information about primary residence and rental house. Oh, before I go, let me also tell you, this is where you would do model Roth conversions. So if you wanted to do a Roth conversion, and you'll notice it only lets you select a traditional IRA. So if you have a 401k up here, it's not going to let you select a 401k. And the reason for that is not every 401k provider allows for Roth conversions. And because that is plan dependent, the workaround is just call it a traditional IRA instead of a 401k if you want to model out what a Roth conversion would look like. So we've selected the IRA, and then we have to select the Roth IRA. So they've already got this Roth IRA selected. We select the year that we're going to do the conversion. In this case, we'll say 2026. And then we'll say it's a $20,000 Roth conversion in 2026. So that's how you model Roth conversions. If we were to say 2024, let me show you what happens. So if I select the current year, 2024, this convert button pops up. The convert button is only available in the year of conversion. And the reason is because when you hit this button, what it does is it reduces your Roth IRA account by $20,000, and it reduces your IRA account by $20,000, and it increases your Roth IRA by $20,000. So the convert button can only be pushed in the year of conversion. But when you select the year 2024 over on the tax tab, that's where you see this IRA distribution taking place on the tax tab to account for the Roth conversion that's happening. So if we look out in the year 2026, for example, you'll notice there's no Roth conversion that year. But back here on the assets and liabilities tab, if we were to change this to 2026, now the convert button's not there because it's not 2026 yet. We can't move money from one account to the other. But over here on the taxes tab, you can see that we can model what that Roth conversion looks like. So there's the $20,000 Roth conversion that takes place in 2026. And I'll get back to that in just a minute and go over that in a little bit more detail. But just so you know that we have the ability to do Roth conversions. We put in the value of their primary residence, and then they also have a rental property. These are jointly owned and the current values. I think Zillow and Redfin are both good tools for finding estimates for what real estate's valued at. I also found a cool website recently called Neighborhood Scout for people that are real estate investors. It really provides a lot of neat information that could be a tool that's available to you if you're interested in, what the historical appreciation has been for your particular neighborhood. Personal property. Remember, anytime there's an X over here, it means we can delete a row. You can always add rows. So we wanted to make this as customizable as possible for you. And then other assets. This guy has a fixed indexed annuity. We put in here $200,000 as an other asset. And then liabilities, in this case, this example has no liabilities, so we'll say no liabilities. Now, a question would be, why do we put the annuity contract under other assets? The last time I did one of these presentations, somebody actually owned a fixed indexed annuity, but it had an income rider on it, so they wanted to know how you accounted for the income and the asset value. And what you don't want to do is double count for those. So the reason that we put the fixed indexed annuity down here as 200,000 is because we also needed to account for the income that annuity was guaranteed to produce. And so we just don't want to double count for the assets. That's why we have that annuity isolated like that. Okay, so assets and liabilities. Do we have any questions about that? Let me look at my questions real quick. Yeah, I'll answer that question, Dave. Hold on just one second. Thoughts on delaying Social Security? If you have the assets to do so, is it smart? Okay, we'll talk about that. How should one interpret the future view options? These are great questions, you guys. Some of them I think I'm going to answer as we go, but I want to make sure that we're covering them. So, Dave, your question about how do we know if a Roth conversion makes sense? Well, one thing that you can do, so I'm just going to use this example again. So we've got the Roth conversion question here. Whoops, let me come back over to assets and liabilities. So I'm going to remove this Roth conversion. I'm going to say we don't have a Roth conversion. So now when I come over to the year 2026, you'll see there's no IRA conversion taking place. And I can come over to my dashboard, scroll to the bottom of the dashboard, and using today's current tax assumptions. So this is not trying to change the tax law into the future based on inflation or anything of that nature. It just says, here's how the tax law works today, and we assume that it stays that way throughout the entirety of retirement. But you can see if they do no Roth conversions, their estimated lifetime taxes are $605,629. 605, 629. And then you come back up over here to the assets and liabilities. We'll put that $20,000 Roth conversion in. We'll make sure that the Roth conversion is being accounted for on the tax tab, and then we'll come back over to the dashboard, go back to the bottom. And so now you can see lifetime taxes are $585,544. So it was $605,629. Now it's $585,544. And so you say, well, that looks pretty good. What if we did another Roth conversion? Add another Roth conversion. We'll say we do this one in 2027 from John's IRA to John's Roth. 2027, we'll do another 20,000. And then we come back up here to the dashboard and we look at the year. So now lifetime tax is $567,000. So part of the reason it's advantageous in this particular scenario is you see that they have very low tax liability because they haven't started Social Security yet. And actually, maybe we have started Social Security. Let me double check. Oh yeah, we do have Social Security, but just very little of it's taxable based on the provisional income rules. So they've got Social Security, but most of their income is actually coming out of their savings account, because remember, that was the account that we said we were going to dip into initially. That's the first withdrawal rate. So that's a very tax efficient way to be drawing money, which means that they're in a really low tax environment. If we look at the tax tab, their total income is $45,000. After the standard deduction, their taxable income is only $16,640. in the year 2026. So that's one way to try to help understand whether or not a Roth conversion could make sense for you. Thoughts on delaying Social Security? So Social Security is a wonderful benefit. Just remind you guys that it's inflation adjusted income, it's tax efficient income, there are spousal benefits, there are survivor benefits, there are delayed retirement credits. There's a lot that goes into Social Security. There's a great website that's helpful in helping you calculate Social Security. Let me just pull up this website. It's called Open Social Security, opensocialsecurity.com. So this is a website that you can use to help you analyze some of these different Social Security claiming options. But coming back over here to the calculator, one of the things that we always do when we're working with folks as advisors is we will create multiple models. So we'll create a Social Security strategy where somebody starts at 62, 67, 70. Maybe we'll have the wife start early and have the husband postpone, or vice versa. So we'll just run these different models, and then we'll compare and we'll say, well, which one puts us in the best position? And there's a couple of things I think you want to compare with Social Security. One is how much money do you have at the end of your life as a result of when you start Social Security? Two is how much money do you pay in taxes as a result of your Social Security claiming strategy? And then three, what strategy gives you the most lifetime benefit over two people's lifetimes? So you really want to explore all of those different parts. But great question, Jim. Thanks for asking that question. These are great questions. A lot of them have to do with the future view, so I'm going to come back to them. But dividend income and interest income. Okay, I'm going to address that one next. I entered 10 Roth conversion lines, so I could try different scenarios. Great idea, Jeff. Okay, so let me keep going through the next tab. So this is the one that I think really differentiates the tool that we created versus most of the financial planning tools that exist. In fact, one of the primary reasons that I created the retirement budget calculator was because in most financial planning software that I encountered, everybody just kind of threw it in as one lump sum number. And that is, there's so many problems with that I don't want to get into all of it, but not all of expenses happen for all of your life. Sometimes people want to travel more in the early years of retirement, so you need to be able to start and stop expenses. Not all expenses go up equally with inflation. So, medical expenses you might want to have at a higher rate of inflation, and groceries at a lower rate of inflation, gasoline at a different rate of inflation. So you're just trying to account for all of these moving parts. But one of the things I'm always trying to remind people of is that retirement is really all about cash flow. It's all about making sure you've got enough income coming in to cover all of your expenses. And so the first area that we use in the calculator is we allow people to enter the income that they have and when that income is going to happen and when it's going to end. So he has wages, $10,000. That's a monthly income that he has. You notice we select the type here. And so in this case, wages, salaries, and tips. We have these categories all match up with your tax return. So that's why they're named they are, because it matches up with the tax tab, and the tax tab was designed based on your tax return. The owner of the income is important because it's tied to his retirement date. So you notice this income ends when he's retired. So you want to make sure you have the correct owner listed for each income type. In this case, the receipt frequency is monthly. But again, this is an area that we wanted to give you a lot of customization because people get paid different ways. And we say it's on the first of the month. It's started January of 2024, and it's going to end when he's retired, and there's no inflation factor. So in this case, we're going to say that this income does not go up with inflation. And then these receipt months over here just show that this happens every month. One of the cool things about the calculator is you can totally customize it. So if you only get paid quarterly, you can come through here and just select the months that the income is going to happen. And that's a feature that's available to you. Social Security. So we have him starting his Social Security, her starting her Social Security. It's important that you select Social Security as the income type because we're doing the Social Security provisional income calculations on the tax tab. So it's important that we identify it as the correct type of income. The other thing that we're doing with Social Security is that we automatically, when one person dies, we're handling that income stopping correctly in the calculator. So, let me go back here and change the time tab so we see the difference in ages. So in this case, he's going to live to 82 and she's going to live to age 85. So you can see the blue line represents his life expectancy. So when they were both alive, they had his Social Security, her Social Security, and a pension. He dies in 2045. And so you'll notice the Social Security that continues is the higher of the two. That's how Social Security works. So it's, again, important that we identify whose Social Security it is and who it's tied to, so that the calculator's correctly showing you what happens when one person dies. Now, when you select pension, so you notice we have this as pensions. It's a taxable pension. Sometimes if people have VA pensions that are non-taxable, or some other type of pension that's non-taxable, we can put non-taxable there. You notice here non-qualified dividends. So if you want to account for interest income and dividends, I think that was one of the questions, so that your current year looks as accurate as possible, you can come in here and find the correct income type. So if you have taxable interest income, and that's going to happen in 2024, you come over here to the tax tab, and then in the year 2024, now you can see I have that as a monthly interest. So you've got $12,000 of interest income now. Now, the tricky thing about interest and dividends is it can really help you from a tax estimation standpoint, make your tax profile look that much more clear. It's really hard to project that out into the future. And again, the thing you want to be careful with is double counting a rate of return. When you think of a total rate of return, you've got your income, dividend income, and then you have your capital appreciation. So what I would recommend is, if you are going to account for your income separately, that you should reduce the rate of return that you're going to assume. So if you had been assuming a 4% rate of return, and that was a total rate of return, capital appreciation and dividends, then maybe you want to show this as a 2% capital appreciation rate, because you've got a 2% dividend rate coming off of that income. So that's how you can do it. But the other thing I wanted to show you over here is where, if you select pension, so you select a taxable pension, this more button pops up. And the purpose of this is so that you can select a survivor benefit. If your spouse is going to get 50% of your benefit when you die, you just put in 50%. And then again, in the future view, we will automatically reduce the pension by 50% upon the death of the first spouse. So if we come over here to the future view and we say, okay, John was getting $1,000 a month, $12,000 when he's alive. Now she's only going to get 50% of that income going forward upon his death. Okay. And then another thing that comes up sometimes is people have a one-time lump sum event. They're going to sell a house. So in this case, you'll notice we left this blank. We didn't select an account type. Now, we could really get detailed here, and if it's a long-term capital gain, we could put it in as a long-term capital gain, or but in this case, we put $400,000 in, and then we created a deduction contribution for the net amount. So in a separate spreadsheet, we calculated how much net proceeds will they receive after the sale of the house. So rather than trying to do the tax calculations within the calculator, we manually calculated those, and then they said, okay, $304,000 is how much they're actually going to receive after fees and taxes and all that fun stuff, paying off the mortgage. And then the contribution account shows where those proceeds go. So in this case, they're saying that in 2029, they're going to sell this house for $400,000, and they're going to have $304,000 remaining. And then if you come over to the future view, you'll see in the year 2029, we have this $304,000 cash flow event. And that money, we have it all going into their savings account. So that's how we account for something like the sale of an asset. Tax withholdings is if you're, well, there's two things. Number one, state income taxes. Because we're not calculating state income taxes, if you know the dollar amount that you want to estimate for state income taxes, you can enter that here as a way to account for state income taxes, and then you'll see that show up over on the tax tab. So down here, we've got your state income tax calculation. So the retirement budget calculator is estimating federal income taxes, but the only way we account for state income taxes is if you enter it. And then federal withholding taxes, if you're having taxes withheld from your pay or from Social Security or pension, you can put that in here. And then on the tax tab, what it's going to do is show you the difference, like how much did you have withheld versus how much do you actually owe, and are you going to have a refund or are you going to owe money at the end? Okay, and then we get down here to expenses. And in this example, again, I just have two very simple expenses, essential and discretionary. So we're saying they have $4,000 a month of essential expenses. These are jointly owned. Ownership is important on expenses as well, because if you have an expense that's going to last for both people's lifetimes, so $4,000 is going to last no matter what, you want that to be a joint expense so that when one person dies, that 4,000 continues for the surviving spouse. However, if you have, let's say you have travel budget in there, and when one person dies, then the travel budget's going to end. So you would assign that expense to whoever you think is going to die first. In this case, we would assign it to the husband because he's expected to die first, so that we could see that expense ending upon his death. Again, you've got frequency type. One of the things you can do that's really cool with frequency is say custom. So maybe this $4,000 is only going to happen once. It's only going to happen in January, or maybe it's going to happen in May, March, August, and November and December. So it doesn't follow any typical traditional frequency type. By selecting the specific months that the expense happens, it will make the spending plan that much more detailed, and I'll show you where you'd find that information. But in this case, we'll change it back to monthly because we're going to assume that this expense is happening every month. And then one of the things that we did, again, that really makes the calculator difference is we allow you to break out your expenses between essential and discretionary expenses. So essential expenses are not discretionary. This is money you cannot live without. Discretionary says that if we had to cut back, this is $4,000 a month that we had to, so we mark it as discretionary, and I'll show you why that's important in a minute. Now, some people, one of the biggest criticisms about the calculator is you have to manually enter this information, and people don't really know how much they spend. So I will tell you, like for me, I update my budget at the first of every year. And my wife and I, we use our debit card for almost everything. We started out in the old days doing the old Dave Ramsey, Larry Burkett, cash and envelopes. Then we graduated from cash and envelopes when we had a good handle on our money, and now we just use our debit card. So it's really easy for me to go through the transaction history in my bank and say, okay, how much did I spend at the grocery store? How much did I spend on gasoline? How much did I spend on average for my electric bill? And it took me about an hour and a half to update it. But I would encourage you, there's three things we want everybody to have as they're preparing for retirement: clarity to know what's most important to you, confidence to know the numbers are going to work. And then when you have those two things, clarity and confidence, the expectation is you're going to experience freedom from fear, freedom from greed, freedom to go out and spend your time with the people that are most important to you. And I really believe that the more detailed you are with entering your information, the more confidence you're going to have. There's another resource I'll bring to your attention here real quick on the clarity side of things. Oh, this is the one in 2021. This is where you find it. So every year for the last 10 years or 10 plus years, episode number 336, this is the one you want to look for, episode 336, says download the free ebook. So this button right here, download this free ebook, Designing a Great Year. So every year for the past 10 plus years, I've been getting together with a group of guys, and we design the year ahead, and every year we add more and we take stuff away. But we've got these exercises in here for really getting clarity about what's most important in your life. And there's seven exercises that you can go through. And again, it's a free resource. But one of the things we always want to encourage people is to not retire from something, but retire to something, and really have a clear sense of purpose about what this next phase of your life is going to look like. So episode number 336, if you just type in 336 in the search bar at Sound Retirement Planning, you'll be able to find that resource. Okay, so we've got our expenses. Of course, we want you to put expenses by the type that they are, categorize them, so your loans and liabilities. Make sure you put end dates on these things. So if you have a mortgage that's going to be paid off in 2029, when you put an end date on there, it will make the mortgage stop that year so that we can see that expense going away. The other thing with a mortgage is I like to break it out where you have the principal and interest as one line item and then taxes and insurance as another one, because principal and interest will stop, but your taxes and insurance are going to go on forever. Principal and interest doesn't go up with inflation, but taxes and insurance do. So if you break that payment out, it'll provide a more realistic spending plan for you. Food and personal care. Don't get in an argument with your wife when she tells you how much money she wants to spend on her hair compared to the guys and how much the barber. You can tell I've had that conversation. Auto insurance, all of your different insurance types. Remember to account for Medicare supplemental insurance. So you have even if you're retiring from like the federal government, you'll have your FERS benefit, but then in retirement, most people opt for Medicare at age 65. And so you want to make sure that you're accounting for Medicare. You might want to assume that health insurance expenses go up at 5% per year instead of the average 3%. That's been my experience, is health insurance costs have been going up greater than overall inflation. Vehicles and transportation costs, and then of course, travel and entertainment and giving and miscellaneous. Another thing, let me point this out to you while I'm thinking about it. There's a couple of spots you can do this. If this feels overwhelming to you, and I know to me it seems so obvious and basic, but it's also, I designed it and it's where we spend all of our time every day as advisors. So if this is overwhelming, we do have this talk to an advisor button. If you're thinking, you're the kind of person that doesn't want to do this on your own, you'd rather hire somebody to help you with it. Or if you click up here on the account section, and then go to the advisor accessibility button, you can check this box and then hit the submit button. And when you do that, it gives my team the ability to see the information that you entered into the calculator. And then it also gives you the ability to schedule a meeting with one of our advisors. So there's two different ways you can do it. You can click on the talk to an advisor button, or you can click on advisor accessibility. Since I'm on the account page, a couple other things. My subscription, so if you want to cancel your subscription ever, it's super easy to do. You just click on my subscription and click cancel. And then two-factor authentication. If you haven't set this up yet, just for an additional privacy measure, if you click on two-factor authentication and then enter your phone number, agree to receive text messages, then anytime you log into the calculator, we'll send you a text message to authenticate that you're just as an additional safety precaution to make sure that you actually are who you say you are trying to log in there. Oh, great point, Mike. I just opened it up and Mike says, be careful doing a Roth conversion if you're on an affordable health care plan. The conversion did not affect our taxes, but it did greatly impact the amount of assistance we would receive, and the calculator does not address this. That's a good point. The calculator addresses it in the sense that down here at the bottom of the page, we will show, we address the IRMA, so income-related Medicare adjustments. So if you're over age 65 and you convert too much, that can cause you to pay more money in taxes. But you're right that right now in the calculator, you have to know that if you do a Roth conversion, that it could impact the amount of subsidy you receive for the Affordable Care Act. That's a great point. Deferred comp payout over 20 years. 20 years payout is fixed, but I can choose a fixed or variable annuity option. So yeah, that you would just do exactly that. Probably the easiest way to account for that income would just be if it's going to be the same amount of income, the deferred comp is just going to pay to you a fixed amount every year for 20 years. You could just put it in as an annual distribution, say what month it's going to happen, and have it end in the 20th year, so that the income stops in the 20th year, and then don't give it an inflation factor if it's a fixed income. I don't have any quick rules of thumb when it comes to comparing IRAs versus Roth, and I share rules of thumb all the time, but when it actually comes to planning, I think rules of thumb are great for people that don't have something like the retirement budget calculator. The whole idea with having the calculator is we don't have to guess anymore. We don't have to use rules of thumb. We can actually go and make the projections and see what the impact would be. And that's the value of the calculator. Should a scenario be run with optimistic rates of return to get a worst case for RMDs? Well, that's an interesting thought. So again, I always like to say hope for the best, plan for the worst. And we'll talk about rates of return on this next tab that we're going to go to. But I feel much more comfortable when we're planning for people if we assume a low rate of return. But you're right that if you assume a higher rate of return, it will impact the amount of the future required minimum distributions. I entered 10 different Roth conversion lines so I could try different scenarios. That's awesome. Roth conversions, the calculator shows lifetime taxes. Does it also show the net or loss of income? I'll show you how you can mess around with that. Is there a limit for Roth conversion? No limit on Roth conversion. There are limits on Roth. You know, if your income's too high, you can't contribute to a Roth, but there's no limit on how much income you have and be able to do conversions. And so people miss that opportunity because it used to be if you had more than $100,000 of income, you couldn't do Roth conversions, but that went away like back in 2010, I think was when that changed. How can you see lifetime benefit totals? I'm going to show you that in just a minute. How would I model deferred comp? Oh, we talked about that. In the community tab, are there discussions about individual state issues? I encourage you to create discussions about individual state issues. I see Social Security. How do you see Medicare expenses? Oh, Medicare expenses are, you want to just account for Medicare expenses under insurance and medical. That's where I would recommend you do it. We have a lot of placeholder data in here, so if you deleted everything, but we have Medicare supplementals in there. And then in terms of how much you should use, so figure right now it's about $200 a month for Medicare Part B, a little bit less. And then figure you're probably going to spend about $200 per month for a Medicare supplemental plan. So you've got your Medicare Part B, I think it's 180 or something right now, but we'll call it $200 a month, $200 a month for a supplemental plan, and then another $50 a month for a Medicare Part D prescription drug plan. So most people probably, if you start out in today's dollars at about $450 a month, you're probably going to be in the ballpark for what to expect for Medicare. Would it be a consideration to not convert to a Roth and use the traditional funds as tax-free gifts and use it that way? Sure. It starts at 72. Actually, so there's something called the qualified charitable distributions, and this is not something that you can model in the calculator. We don't have the ability to do QCDs currently, but it actually starts at 70 and a half, and it's weird because that's the age that required minimum distributions used to be required, but now they've updated that. It could be as early as 73 or 75. QCDs start at age 70 and a half. So at 70 and a half, you can give money directly from your IRA to qualified charity, and it satisfies your RMD, and it also is tax-free distribution to the charity. So it's a pretty cool option. Yes, that would be $450 for each spouse for Medicare. I have had high rate of return on IRA, making RMDs later really high, so doing Roths now. Is there an easy way to max out, say, 22% tax bracket other than going back and forth till you hit it? Not currently, but again, in the new RBC that we're working on, that is a feature that has been requested that we're working on right now, is the ability to max out your current tax bracket for Roth conversions, or at least get some guidance. Okay, so we talked about the tax estimator and how it's pulling data from the information you enter in on the calculator on the income side of things. A big mistake that people make over here on the budget data is they will enter in 401k withdrawals as an income. You don't want to do that. The calculators automatically, so I'm gonna skip past the quick view, the monthly details, and the net worth report and go to the future view, and then we can circle back around if you have questions about these. But on the future view, what we're doing is we're saying the green line represents the year of retirement. So there'll be 62 at the end of this year. If you click on this row, you can see what makes up their income. So 71,000 is the total, but 30,000 wages, Social Security, and pension income. Their estimated federal taxes are $9,117. That gives them an estimated effective tax rate of 15.44%. Their net income is the 71,000 minus the 9,000. So their net income after taxes is 62,871, and their budget requires $98,880. So that means they have a shortfall of $36,000. Whenever there's red here, it means they have a shortfall. if you click over here on the 36,000, you can see that means they're having to take a withdrawal from their account. In this case, remember, we have the withdrawal coming from their savings account. This is money that's already been taxed. So they take the 36,000 out. They have 149,000 remaining after they earn that 5% rate of return on their money. In this case, we have it growing at 5%. And you can see the withdrawal percentage is 2.3%. So the next year in 2026, their withdrawal rate's 4.8%. 4.8%. Then all of a sudden they sell the house down here, and that gives them a big chunk of money. And then when you get down to 67, their withdrawal rate's only 3.1%. So you can kind of look at what the withdrawal rate is every year. Another thing you can do up here, you can say allow for custom rates of return. So if we allow for custom rates of return, you'll notice this changes to a variable percentage. And now whatever we entered over here on the assets and liabilities tab is what we're going to be using for the rate of return. So 0.244 was the rate of return for each account. So you can see on their cash account, we're assuming 0%, on their brokerage account, 2%, and on their IRAs, 4%. And that's how, when we're, as advisors, when we're building plans for people, we, again, like to hope for the best, plan for the worst. So we'll assume really low rates of return and see, does the plan work with those low rates of return? And then if we want to go back and say, okay, what would have happened historically if I had a 60% stock, 40% bond portfolio, just using the S&P 500 and 10-year treasuries, and we use a historical sequence of return from 1978 forward, you know, what, and then we project those rates of return here, what would that look like? And that's always overly optimistic, in my opinion. I mean, it always makes the numbers look huge. So I'd caution you about using the historical. You know, that's why every prospectus you get on an investment says past performance is no guarantee of future results. We also include the bad timing sequence of returns. So if you say, well, if I have 60% stock, 40% bond, and I retired in a year like the year 2000, where you experienced the dot-com bubble, and then you experience the financial crisis, and then you experience the you know, the World Trade Center being bombed, and you know, there was a rough patch of time there. The 2000 to 2018 was or 2000 to 2009 was considered the lost decade. You know, that's where the S&P 500 was basically negative during that period of time. So that would have been a bad time to start retirement in recent history. So you can say, well, what would a bad timing sequence of returns look like? And in that model, you know, you get out to 3.2 million at the end of your life. So we just give you the opportunity to test some different, you know, stock, bond. And now this is not a recommendation. I just want to clarify. I would hope that you're a lot more diversified than just 500 stocks in the S&P 500 and 10-year treasuries. But we've got a lot of historical data, so it makes it easy just to create these kind of baseline portfolios to show you what would have happened. But hopefully you're going to be broadly diversified across asset classes, sectors, across the entire globe. Large, mid, small on the equity side. You're going to want international, emerging markets. You're going to want corporate bonds. You're going to want treasuries. So you really want to have a fully diversified portfolio, not just two simple asset classes. But one of the cool things in the report is we allow you to see all expenses versus essential expenses only. So remember, all expenses in their case said they needed $8,000 adjusted for inflation, because remember, their expenses are going up every year with inflation. But what if you said, well, you know, if really bad things happen, would we be okay if we just had our essential budget that we had to account for? And that's where, again, spending some time on the budget side to really make sure the numbers are going to work for you is going to help give you that confidence. Remember, we're automatically calculating the required minimum distribution. So you do not enter required minimum distributions as an income type, because we're calculating that. So down here at age, now they're younger, so they don't have to start RMDs until age 75. But you can see his traditional IRA, we're doing the RMD calculation there. Now this, to your point, if you end up with a high rate of return, the RMDs could be much higher. And so that's why you would want to create different models to see, you know, make different assumptions, create different models, and see what happens. And in the new version of the calculator that we have coming out, we're gonna make it much easier to compare side by side some of these different calculations that people are trying to figure out, but just wanted to bring that to your attention. Now over here on the buckets tab, if you listen to the podcast at all, you'll know that I like to say that time is the cure to the volatility of the stock market. The more time you have, the more risk you can afford to take. What the purpose of the buckets tab is to look at your portfolio withdrawals. So the first 3 years of retirement, how much money are you going to need to take out of the portfolio? And then it just says, okay, well, we know what our shortfall is going to be. Let's make, let me change this back to all expenses. Okay, so we know that we're going to have a shortfall of 36,000, 55,000, 57,000. So the buckets tab basically is just saying, we want to have low risk money, so money that's not volatile, as your starting retirement, because the bad timing sequence of returns is going to hurt you the most right at the onset of retirement. So if you retire at 60 and we happen to experience a really bad sequence of returns, it's going to be a really bad position to have all of your money invested in equities, at that time. So instead, what we say is, well, let's just make sure that we have some money that's low risk, so that if the market does tank, we have time to recover. And then we take years 4 through 6, years 7 through 9. And the great thing about the bucket strategy from a volatility standpoint and behavioral economic standpoint is we say, okay, now we know that we've got $1 million. We've got a 10-year time horizon on this money before it's going to need to be touched. We can afford to be more aggressive with this bucket. So that's the idea behind the buckets. Now, if any of you are interested in coming back over here to YouTube and then click on videos and scroll down until you see this video right here. It's called the Retirement Bucket Strategy Backtest. We actually give you access to be able to do the same backtest. So I show you the benefit of why a bucket strategy makes sense. Let me show you how you can find it. So you come over here, you click on the blog, and then you come down to this post here. New research on buckets shows the bucket strategy is better than previously thought. One of the members in the community portal is this, he's a physicist, he's brilliant, he's this brilliant guy. And he and I were having a debate about whether or not buckets was a valid way to diversify a portfolio in retirement. And he was trying to tell me that it was less efficient, that it wasn't as efficient. And so to prove me wrong, he created this bucket backtest spreadsheet, the bucket simulator here. So if you click on the bucket simulator, you can watch the video, so it shows you how to use the bucket simulator. But after he ran the bucket simulator, he came back to me and said, Jason, you're right. The bucket strategy actually performed better than just a regular traditional 60-40 stock bond portfolio when backtesting. Now, of course, past performance is no guarantee of future results. So just because we backtested and it worked doesn't mean it's always going to work that way. But if people try to argue and say that backtesting or that a bucket strategy is less efficient than just a total return strategy, well, you can run the numbers for yourself and tell me what you come up with. And again, it doesn't have to be just about the calculator. It can be about Social Securities, it can be about pensions, it can be about investing, it could be about insurance. Well, good. Thank you guys for being here. I hope you found this helpful. And until next time, tune into the podcast if you want some more bad jokes. Oh, is there a negative to converting all to a Roth? Absolutely, yeah, potentially. That's why we don't know until we run the numbers, and that's what I would encourage you to do, Jeff, is run the numbers and see what could be some negatives to converting to a Roth. Maybe you'll pay more money in taxes over your lifetime. Very rarely would I say, does it make sense to convert all in 1 year? Usually if you're going to do Roth conversions, you want to come over to the lifetime taxes and understand what years are going to be optimal for doing those Roth conversions. The taxation of your Social Security could come into play. I mean, there's going to be a couple things. It used to be, remember on the Roth conversion, it used to be that once you got that money into a tax-free position, your kids could inherit that money and it would be tax-free for the rest of their life. Now there's the 10-year rule that says that when the kids inherit the Roth, that all the money has to come out of the account by the end of the 10th year. But still, if you think about the power of taxes and you pay the taxes up front, especially right now while we're in this really low tax environment that we're in. I know this one always upsets people, but Let me show it to you. We've got these really low tax rates. They're going to go up by default at the end of 2025. This is the usdebtclock.org. And it just shows that our national debt's currently $34 trillion and growing rapidly. And so if you think that taxes are going to continue to go up in the future, and it seems like something's going to have to give in order to account for all the spending that we're doing, that right now, while we have these really low tax rates, 2024, 2025, definitely good years to be thinking about Roth conversions. So it's not meant to be a political statement, just kind of a reality of where we're at. Taxes are probably going to have to go up. What percentage of state taxes should be taken out of pension? That's hard. The reason we haven't built state taxes into the calculator is because each state has so many moving parts that it really is, it's a big lift. So we haven't tried to tackle that yet. So you need to, I would encourage you to double check with your CPA about state pensions, because some states tax them, some states tax Social Security, some states don't tax Social Security, so it's really going to depend on your specific state. How do we see total from future view? So you come over here to the future view. Which total are you talking about? The total amount? Oh, so one of the things that some people in the community have talked about doing, if you're just trying to grab like totals across all of the accounts, people will just copy this table and paste it into a spreadsheet, and then you can manipulate the spreadsheet. That's something I know some people have done. I'm not sure which total you're talking about. Usually the totals we're looking at is the total value that will be remaining at the second person's lifetime. So in this case, 604,000. And then we're also looking at total lifetime taxes, which you can find over on the dashboard. Oh, Social Security, how much total lifetime Social Security? That's where you want to use a tool like Open Social Security to see how much total lifetime income you'll receive from Social Security. I've got a great resource on sound retirement planning. If you come over here and do a search for Social Security, this one here, the Ultimate Social Security Podcast. So this is a podcast. For years, I had somebody from the Social Security Administration as a guest, Kirk Larson as a guest. He was a public affairs specialist with the Social Security Administration. And we go through just a bunch of questions. And then I also provide links to these calculators. So Open Social Security is the one we just talked about. Another really good Social Security tool is SSA Tools, where you can use both of these tools, SSA tools as well as Open Social Security, for calculating the best Social Security claiming option. And then you can enter that information into the retirement budget calculator. But if you go to soundretirementplanning.com and look for episode number 314, the Ultimate Social Security Podcast, I think that you'd find that helpful. Yeah, how to account for long-term care. That's a big one. It's one that most people don't want to think about, but what I would do in the calculator here is I would come over to the budget data, and then I would come down to insurance and medical. And then hopefully you never need long-term care, but a lot of people do end up needing it. So I would create a new expense called long-term care. And I would just call it long-term care. And Genworth has a really great tool. Let me show you this, Genworth cost of care study. So if you're trying to understand how much long-term, the actual cost of care, not insurance, but how much does it actually cost for a nursing home or assisted living, you can enter in your zip code. So I'll put in my zip code here, Silverdale. And then it will tell me, in-home care is an average for home health aid, $4,195. Assisted living can range from adult day healthcare, $6,200, to an assisted living facility of $8,440 per month. And a nursing home can be anywhere from $12,000 to $13,000 on average. So if you can look up, in your area, how much the current costs are, and then you can come over to the calculator and you can enter that in. So you say, well, it's going to be $13,000. It's going to be just based on John's lifetime. It's going to happen monthly. And it's probably not going to happen. We're going to say that doesn't start until, we'll say, 20 years. We'll say in 2044 is when that happens. I think that Genworth cost of care survey shows that on average, most people need care for 3 years. So we'll come over here and say that 2047. So you have this extra $13,000 expense, and that expense is going to be increasing at 3% per year until that point. And then you can look at the future view and say, okay, are we going to be okay if long-term care happens, or should we consider purchasing insurance to help guard against that risk? Now, I'll tell you, getting insurance is harder and harder to qualify for, and fewer companies are offering it, and a lot of the companies have had pretty massive rate increases. So you're going to have some work cut out for you. You probably want to find somebody that specializes in that type of insurance, where that's all they do is help with long-term care. But great question. You're welcome. All right, guys. Well, I hope I'm sorry you're getting some snow in other places, but if you're somewhere in Western Washington, go out and enjoy the sunshine, soak up as much vitamin D as you can, and send me some good jokes to share with people on the podcast if you would. And join the community, introduce yourself, and let's help build something awesome for people. Okay, until next time, signing out.